position of neutrality. Welcome to New Freedom. How many of you are here for the first time? Wow, a whole bunch of you. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Where are my members? How many members do I have in here tonight? Wow, very good. Thank you guys for making the effort to come out. Where are my graduates? All right, thank you. Where are my people that did the full circle? You were members, then you were volunteers, and now you're employees here at New Freedom. Thank you very much. It's our way of showing you that it works. One man, armed with the facts about himself, winning the confidence of another in a few hours. Until such an accommodation is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. But as you can see, as you look around this room, much can be accomplished when we think of other people's needs and work for them. Yeah? All right, so some of you might be wondering, if you've been here before, why is Joe in a different jacket? And I am obligated in the spirit to tell you exactly why I'm in a different jacket. I woke up this morning and I put on that same leather jacket every Thursday for a year or more. True? But this morning in the spirit, I heard loud and clear, the camels are coming. And I was obligated to share that with you. Those of you who know biblical teaching know the significance of that, but camels are the deliverer of riches to God's people. So I don't know who felt that, but I'm telling you, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. The camels are coming. The other thing we do, our recovery meeting on Thursday is open to your families. If you're new here and you haven't been told, invite your families. And also the recovery church on Saturday, same thing. The doors will open at 6:15 for them. We encourage you to bring your families so that they can see you in a new light and start celebrating your release with you. Fair enough? And then tonight we're going to take a look. I'm going to dive right in because why not? We're going to take a look at the instructions for steps 8 and 9, because one of the things about us is we are all about freedom here at New Freedom. And one of the things that people dread the restitution steps, 8 and 9, but they really should not. We want to take the mystery out of it, but by the time we get to the practice of the 9th step and discipline in the 9th step, admitting promptly when we're wrong, what the authors promise us, we're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. So this is a freedom step, right? So we're going to start taking a look. Go to page 76 of your book. And it starts with, now we need more action, without which we find that faith without works is dead. How many people in the room know where that reference comes from? Do you think it's by accident that they grabbed a little page out of the book of James to help us alcoholics get free of our spiritual bondage? Faith without works is dead is particularly for the alcoholic because we are doubters by nature. And so it's imperative that I learn to take this power out for a walk, to prove the power to me, through me. And in that effort of proving the power to me, through me, I bear witness to his love, his power, his way of life. And you might inquire, Joe, why were you such a wreck and now you're doing better? And I can give you credit because you noticed his work in me. Does that make sense? Okay. So then it says, we have a list of all persons we have harmed and to whom we are willing to make amends. Do any of you have such a list, or did you get one? Some of you that did it, where did you get it? They made it when they took inventory. So the reason that we might want to do 4 before 9 is I'm going to need the list in 8. In case people wondered if it was necessary to do the steps in order. No. But you'll be improperly prepared and you may not get the experience they describe because you did not prepare in the way they suggest. Does it make sense? Okay? So then it says, we subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. Those of you who have done a 4-step inventory, did you do a drastic self-appraisal? Were you keying on drastic, Lance? Can you turn me down just a little? I think they think I'm mean. Now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. Did you know that's what this was preparation for? Because you can get the impression in our fellowships that it's all about saying, I'm sorry. Can, right. We've seen whole Seinfeld episodes on it, right? So people don't understand this is about restitution for harms done. This is not about saying I'm sorry. Saying I'm sorry isn't wrong in itself, but how many of you have misused the phrase I'm sorry? I'm sorry to interrupt, but... So it has very little meaning unless backed up by action, doesn't it? Okay. So it says we attempt to sweep away the debris which is accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. So if you haven't been following in the studies, they start revealing to us that willingness is divine power. We got to quit telling people I won't work with you because you're not willing. They're not willing because I'm judging, not because they're doing something wrong. We're not willing until we see a reason, a non-judgmental reason why we should do better, and this willingness comes into us. And as we grow in the Spirit, when we're not willing, we own it and we ask until it comes. Does that make sense? My more biblical people know that our righteousness, though through us, is not of us. Yes? Okay. So then it says, if we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. Remember, it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. With whom did we make that agreement? We had an encounter in 2, we joined in 3, and we made that agreement I would go to any lengths. Yes? Okay. And if God's keeping his word, I might want to keep mine. All right, so probably there are still some misgivings. Any of you have a similar response to Sean? Maybe not so eloquently put. As we look over the list of business acquaintances and friends we have hurt, we may feel diffident about going to some of them on a spiritual basis. What do they mean?
Not so much. Diffident.
You got Lance? Any of you understand when they say diffident, they just weren't too sure after the life they lived whether they wanted to go back to some of the people they interacted with on a spiritual basis. Any of you have some rather nefarious business partners? So that may not be the best first approach. Does that make sense? So let us be reassured, to some people we need not and probably should not emphasize the spiritual feature on our first approach. Why do they point out my first approach? Because the assumption is I'm going to make more than one. Does that make sense? And sometimes if we start preaching before our walk straightens out, we're less than believable. All right, so we might prejudice them. At the moment, we're trying to put our lives in order, but this is not an end in itself. Our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God. Thank you, Mike. When we say God, what do you say? Because they're interchangeable in 12-step recovery. We need for people to let go of the prejudice of the word God because of whatever conceptions they have and come to believe in power, sensory, tangible power found within and manifested outward through us. Does it make sense? Okay. So our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. It is seldom wise to approach an individual who still smarts from our injustice to him and announce that we've gone religious. How many of you have had someone announce they've gone religious as they stole your TV? In the prize ring, this would be called leading with the chin. Why lay ourselves open to being branded fanatics or religious bores? We may kill a future opportunity to carry a beneficial message. They keep talking to us about the message we carry, and they don't talk very much to us about what we talk. Because you're going to believe when you catch me acting better than you think I am, far more than me professing that I am something that I once was not. This is why faith without works is dead in a world run by a God who's more interested in the people than oftentimes we are, is that when I'm just walking in service, that's an observable act. I can tell you I'm praying for you. I can tell you I care about you. But if I show up and lift you up, I leave no doubt. Does that make sense? All right. But our man is sure to be impressed with a sincere desire to set right the wrong. He's going to be more interested in a demonstration of goodwill than in our talk of spiritual discoveries. Wouldn't you be? Does it make sense? How would you like to be treated if the roles were reversed? Would you rather hear the one who harmed you come and admit that they did and that you didn't deserve it and do something to make it right to your specification? Or would you just rather have them just go on as if it never happened and demonstrate nothing to you about the change in the nature? So they don't need to hear about my seeking for God. They need to know where their shit is. Okay. So we don't use this as an excuse for shying away from the subject of God when it will serve any good purpose. We're willing to announce our convictions with tact and common sense. So what's that look like? How would I know that it'll serve some good purpose? That's exactly right. You guys get what he said? Some of us as we're going, why do I want to improve conscious contact? Because it's power, peace, happiness, a sense of direction. I will know at the proper time when the Spirit would like to express himself through me. How many of you have had that experience? How many of you found yourself going, ooh, I'm a little uncomfortable with this, but here we go. All right, I dropped my title. It's not my title. All right. So, wait a minute. The question of how to approach the man we hated will arise. How many of you got one of those or more? It may be that he's done us more harm than we've done him, and though we may have acquired a better attitude toward him, we're still not too keen about admitting our faults. How many of you found one there? I've got a better attitude, but fuck them. I hear it all the time, and they may not be quite that forthcoming, because not everyone's as rough on the edges as I. However, I do hear it in rooms of recovery. I forgive, but I don't forget. Well, then that's human forgiveness, not divine forgiveness. Forgiveness is a divine act. When I am able to forgive, it means that the meaning has been rearranged in my mind and I've been delivered from the event. You get it, right? The reason we go serve others because we were distributed a certain amount of grace to get to a place where we're free enough to tell somebody about who gives us the freedom. And when we do that, we get to witness to that musty past, and that musty past now becomes preparation for a useful future. Okay? All right. So it says that nevertheless, with the person we dislike, we take the bit in our teeth. So they're painting a metaphor. What are they talking about? We got the bit in our teeth. It may be a tough haul, but we're going where we want to go. We're taking the situation where we want it to go, right? Okay. Now they're going to make it just an admission here so that we can get ourselves fortified in the Spirit. It's harder to go to an enemy than to a friend, but we find it much more beneficial to us. Now, I've heard people over the years in the fellowship say, well, you got to go to the toughest one first. That's not what they said. They know I'm not spiritually fit enough to do that. It's harder to go to an enemy than to a friend. But as I grow in the Spirit, one of the things you learn is to have no enemies. And you're going to have to get empowered, and that's why they suggest to the wives, to the family, to the employer, get a circle of support around you. Strengthen your spirit, reduce your ego, and then you will find there's more benefit from going and winning friends than winning arguments. Yes? All right, so it says we go to him in a helpful and forgiving spirit, confessing our former ill feeling and expressing our regret. They gave us precise instruction. How do I get in a helpful and forgiving spirit?
Consult the Spirit.
You hear Lance? You agree with Lance? I'm not only going to consult the Spirit, but I'm going to ask the Spirit to infiltrate my being, because I don't feel too helpful or forgiving. But I know that my willingness will come from within as I get a more divine perspective. Does that make sense? How many of you have gone out and made an amends and ended up having to make amends for the amends you made? So you missed the little step about we go to him in a helpful and forgiving spirit, because, see, of myself I don't manifest that. But I have direct access to the one who does. Yeah? All right, so under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. Simply we tell them we'll never get over drinking until we've done our utmost to straighten out the past. How many of you believe that's true? You'll never get over your addiction until you've done your utmost to straighten out the past. The more you go through the process, the more you'll come to believe that. You won't have credibility unless you believe it. If you're just quoting something, it won't mean anything. Because one thing I know about our crowd, we know when we're getting bullshitted. Right? But if you come to me in a helpful and forgiving spirit and you confess your former ill feeling and express your regret, I'll know, I'll feel you coming. We're there to sweep off our side of the street, realizing that nothing worthwhile can be accomplished until we do so. Never trying to tell him what he should do. His faults are not discussed. We stick to our own. Do you notice how they said the same thing so many times? Do you think that might have been that many approaches in growing in the Spirit sufficiently to not argue? Could be, right? They wrote down a book of their experience. The reason they want us to know we're going to keep going back till we get our blessing is they're going to give us some promises there. If our manner is calm, frank, and open, we will be gratified with the result. That's a promise. There's a condition. What's the condition? If our manner is calm, frank, and open. What do they mean, my manner is calm? How many of you have appeared calm but did not feel calm? That means I've consulted the Spirit, doesn't it? What does frank mean? Direct. How many of you have gone to somebody and then you just got to thinking, maybe I'll spin them so I don't look so bad? So you accomplished part of the mission, but you didn't walk away feeling as gratified as you might have. So if I want the full experience, calm, frank, and then what's open? How many of you have been surprised by something a memory they had of you that you did no longer possess? Come on, where's my drinkers? A lot of people got memories of us we don't remember. Thankfully. Where's my opiate addicts? You guys slept through it. Where's my meth addicts? Come on. All right, so in 9 cases out of 10, the unexpected happens. Sometimes the man we're calling upon admits his own faults, so feuds of years standing melt away in an hour. Rarely do we fail to make satisfactory process. Claim the promise. Rarely means rarely. It's not going to happen very often, and usually I've misperceived if I don't think I made satisfactory process because I want to be gratified. But it's not my gratification I seek. It's my freedom I seek, and I can only find my freedom in helping deliver you to yours. Does it make sense? Okay. So, it says, our former enemies sometimes praise what we're doing and wish us well, and occasionally they'll offer assistance. It should not matter, however, if someone does throw us out of his office. We've made our demonstration, done our part. It's water over the dam. Now we're going to get into some obvious statements. Alcoholics who testify are masters of understatement. So it says most alcoholics owe money. I'd like a show of hands of how many of you got to recovery not owing money. Seeing none, I think we've proven. I met one guy one time, and I'm quite sure he's delusional. We do not dodge our creditors. How'd they know that? How many of you have dodged your creditors? Come on, show of hands. And what happens when we dodge our creditors? We can't escape them because the main problem centers in the mind. There's no secrets in the realm of the spirit. I walk around convicted because I won't just own what I owe. They don't want my money. They want their money. Got to grow in perspective. Tell them what we're trying to do. We make no bones about our drinking. They usually know it anyway, whether we think so or not. How many of you thought you were pretty slick in your addiction? Like, shh, nobody knows. How many of you discovered that wasn't quite true? That's what they're talking about. Make no bones about our drinking. They usually know it anyway, whether we think so or not. Nor are we afraid of disclosing our alcoholism on the theory that it may cause financial harm. Some people misread that. I have no obligation or need to disclose my alcoholism to people who were not affected by my alcoholism or my behavior while in my alcoholic mind. However, if I harmed you as a direct result of my alcoholism, I didn't pay the rent, or I stole your money, or I did whatever, you have a right to know that I did it, I know I did it, and you didn't deserve it. And if you go tell everybody you ever meet that you have a drug addiction problem or an alcohol problem, it will cause you harm because they have no obligation to understand and you have no duty to disclose. Does that make sense? So just want to try and get people, sometimes people read shit in and try and get all legalist on us. Let's just get real. We're trying to get redeemed and then walk out in the world and serve, and it's going to get hampered if we give them reasons to be prejudiced before they ever get to encounter us. Okay? All right, so approached in this way, the most ruthless creditor will sometimes surprise us. Arranging the best deal we can, we let these people know we're sorry. How might I let them know I'm sorry? Yeah, I noticed how a lot of you came up with that right away. So letting them know I'm sorry is going to have a lot less to do with what I say and a whole lot more to do with what I do. Yeah? So our drinking has made us slow to pay. We must lose our fear of creditors no matter how far we have to go, for we're liable to drink if we're afraid to face them. I love that in this room. Perhaps we've committed a criminal offense, which might land us in jail if it were known to the authorities. We may be short in our accounts and unable to make good. We've already admitted this in confidence to another person, but we're sure we'd be imprisoned or lose our job if it were known. Any of you got some of that going on or have had that going on? How many of you lived in fear that if anyone finds me out, I'm going to go to jail? How many of you went to jail anyway? How many of you lived in the jail of your mind up until the time you actually got physically incarcerated? So would it not be better to get free in here? Because once I'm free in my mind, where my circumstances will not define my freedom. Does it make sense? We used to say that, Jay Dow's here tonight, we used to say that to people, if we don't free you in there, you'll never live free out here. So interact with us, right? Some of you have probably heard it, those of you who are mentored, right? All right. So maybe it's only a petty offense such as padding the expense account. Many of us have done that sort of thing. Maybe we're divorced and have remarried but haven't kept up the alimony to number one. She's indignant about it and has a warrant out for our arrest. That's a common form of trouble too. Although these reparations take innumerable forms, there are some general principles which we find guiding. So in a lot of flowery words, they're just saying, look, you don't have to relate to the specific problem, but all humans have problems. So we've got some guiding principles in recovery. Regardless of what your situation is, all of us are struggling with something. True? So it says the general principles we find guiding, reminding ourselves that we've decided to go to any lengths to find a spiritual experience. How many of you have been reminded and understand that although in the fellowship we celebrate abstinence, in the program, the 12 steps, the goal is not abstinence, the goal is awakening. And a byproduct of awakening is no need for synthetic spirits. And understand, the more you... How many of you were here today when we went around and put oil on the play? How many of you got a little spiritual inebriation today? That's not a theory, folks. We put a well of power in this place. All right, so we're going to any lengths to find a spiritual experience because I need to be liberated from my own limiting thoughts. Anyone with me? Okay, so I'm reminding myself of that. And then I remind myself from where my help comes from. We ask that we be given strength and direction to do the right thing no matter what the personal consequences may be. How many of you have faced some difficult personal consequences and were empowered to do the right thing? How freeing was that? It says we may lose our position or reputation or face jail, but we're willing. We have to be. We must not shrink at anything. They're telling their story. How do they know that they must? Yeah, didn't we just unwind it? How many of you tried to keep something to yourself and then it just didn't go away? Okay. So at what point are you willing to risk everything you've done to hold on to that secret? Because there's no secrets in the realm of the Spirit. The Creator already knows everything you've ever done. That's one of the things you'll learn here. All right, so usually, however, other people are involved. You ever heard about those mysterious others? Therefore, we're not to be the hasty and foolish martyr who would needlessly sacrifice others to save himself from the alcoholic pit. So they're going to tell us a story about a guy who needed a little help from his fellowship. And we're going to see if we can relate to what happened. A man we know had remarried. Because of resentment and drinking, he had not paid alimony to his first wife. She was furious. She went to court and got an order for his arrest. He had commenced our way of life, had secured a position, and was getting his head above water. It would have been impressive heroics if he'd walked up to the judge and said, "Here I am." So he came in contact with the AAs. He started processing through his manner of living, and he had met another woman, and he had neglected to take care of his obligations to the first one, and now the rent was due. Notice how the energy went down in here? So, of his own mind, egoically, he considered just going to the judge and said, "Here I am." But are we about impressive heroics when we're trying to grow spiritually? No. In fact, if you're students of biblical teaching, what you're supposed to do is go try and make restitution before you go to the judge so that you increase your options. Yes. So, here's what happened. He encountered an AA who had known a spiritual experience. And it says, we thought he ought to be willing to do that if necessary, but if he were in jail, he could provide nothing for either family. So there's your others. We suggested he write his first wife, admitting his faults and asking forgiveness. He did, and also sent a small amount of money. He told her what he would try and do in the future. He said he was perfectly willing to go to jail if she insisted. Which of those do you think was the most powerful demonstration? I always hear that. But you know, if I had money, I'd pay you to stay out of a jam. It was nothing for me to pay money to get out of a jam if I had it. So I always look at the entirety of that. I'm going to ask you for your forgiveness. I'm going to leave you some money. I'm going to tell you right now what I'm going to try and do in the future. And I didn't do any of that to stop you from doing what it is you intended to do. If you want me to go to jail, I'm ready to go surrender. And it was the fact that it's demonstrated to me that I was not being manipulated would change my mind. Does that make sense? Okay. So, of course she did not. Now, I will suggest to you that he did not know the of course she did not part. So he must have been empowered in the spirit to be calm, frank, and open. Does that make sense? How many of you knew you had to go make an admission of something and the consequences could be bad? And you may have appeared calm, but were not calm. So that's what any links might feel like. Does it make sense? Because I'm trying to help you have a sensory experience as we go through their testimony. All right. The whole situation has long since been adjusted. Before taking drastic action which might implicate other people, we secure their consent. So now he's telling us about the others and what we're going to do in order to move forward. Does that make sense? If we have obtained permission, these are our general principles again, have consulted with others, asked God to help, and the drastic step is indicated, we must not shrink. They just described the sensory nature of the experience of the Spirit moving in you. How many of you have asked God and the drastic step was indicated and you know that as a sensory experience? Anyone know what I'm talking about? Because they're talking about a sensory experience. If you don't know, let's help you. How many of you just knew that you needed to get rid of something you were carrying, and when you asked for help, you knew even more. It got stronger. Okay, that's what we're trying to get at. That sensory experience. That's this in 12-step recovery, God is the subject of my experience, not the object of my belief. This isn't a theology, it's a relationship of a power within me gradually overtaking me. Does that make sense? Sometimes suddenly overtaking me. All right, so this brings to mind a story about one of our friends. While drinking, he accepted a sum of money from a bitterly hated business rival, giving him no receipt for it. Have any of you ever done anything like that? Notice the whole condition. While drinking, accepted money from a bitterly hated business rival, giving him no receipt for it. All right? He subsequently denied having received the money and used the incident as the basis for discrediting the man. He thus used his own wrongdoing as a means of destroying the reputation of another. In fact, his rival was ruined. So, I'll tell you a little bit about who this guy is. He was one of the original Oxford group guys, and before everybody just went to AA, some of them remained in Oxford group. They were more religious. Their church family was more important to them than this growing fellowship. And so he had taken this money. The guy had given it to him for a church fund, and he just, I don't know. Have any of you ever been entrusted with money and your intent was not to steal the money, but the evaporative rate of that money in your possession was really uncomfortable to explain? So that's what happened to this cat. It just sort of got away from him, right? And so he just said the cat's lying. And it was money for the church fund, so it ruined this man's reputation. And having done that, he then felt bad about going back to his church family. And so he was really isolated now in the world. So he's going to go on and tell the story. He felt he'd done a wrong he could not possibly make right. If he opened that old affair, he was afraid it would destroy the reputation of his partner, disgrace his family, and take away his means of livelihood. What right had he to involve those dependent upon him? Now let's go back to our guiding principles. What right did he have? None without their permission. Right? See how that might be useful to process difficult decisions? This is a textbook, right? Operating manual, very simple operating manual for a very complex machine, the human mind. We're going to have to get disciplined, yeah? Okay? How could he possibly make a public statement exonerating his rival? How would he know that? How could you possibly know all the people who were condemning of his rival? Remember, he was drinking when he did it. He's going to probably have to consult the Spirit, is he not? Isn't he going to have to ask God to help? Wasn't that one of the guiding principles? Okay, let's see what God told him he had to do. After consulting with his wife and partner, he came to the conclusion it was better to take those risks than to stand before his Creator guilty of such ruinous slander. People don't understand the story. They don't understand why he cared about standing before his Creator. His church family and his relationship with Creator were important to him. Does it make sense? If that's not you, then this may not be as impactful. But how many of you inexplicably lost the seventh tradition money entrusted to you? Me too. Numerous times. You started to think these people are freaking fools. I wish there were bigger groups. There'd be more money. You still got to go make restitution for harms done, right? Okay. He saw that he had to place the outcome in God's hands or he'd soon start drinking again and all would be lost anyhow. Any of you ever get so convicted you knew you had to do something to take it right? All right. He attended church for the first time in many years. After the sermon, he quietly got up and made an explanation. How many of you have had a church family? How many of you would have found it difficult to get up and admit you stole the church fund and lied about it? So do you imagine getting up there quietly didn't feel quietly within him? That's what any links might look like. And remember in the original 100, half of them were religious folks, the other half were atheists or agnostics. So we're going to speak to everyone without trying to offend anyone. But if we do offend you, his action met widespread approval, and today he's one of the most trusted citizens of his town. So what they're witnessing to you about, even to this day, is the thief of the church fund becomes the most trusted citizen in the town through the power of God. That's the witness. Does it make sense? Okay. And that's particularly impactful in our rooms because people want to label us as what we've done instead of whose we are. And we are going to insist that we walk in who we are and whose we are and walk out of here and change the world. Yes? So you got to know this is true. So this all happened years ago. The chances are that we have domestic troubles. Anybody? Perhaps we're mixed up with women in a fashion we wouldn't care to have advertised. We doubt if in this respect alcoholics are fundamentally much worse than other people, but drinking does complicate sex relations in the home. I told you they were masters of understatement. Where's my meth addicts? Complicated sex relations. Motel 6. Whips and chains, leathers and feathers. It's complicated, Sean. Stay with us. After a few years with an alcoholic, a wife gets worn out, resentful, and uncommunicative. Any of you have a partner that got worn out, resentful, and uncommunicative? Okay, but we're not supposed to rest there. Now we have a question. How could she be anything else? Given what came home, when it came home, how could anyone be any different than worn out, resentful, and uncommunicative given what they were enduring for having the audacity to love a man like me? That's why they have a chapter to the wives, so that we can get a different perspective. Does it make sense? Okay. The husband begins to feel lonely, sorry for himself. He commences to look around in the nightclubs or their equivalent for something besides liquor. How many of you have gone off on that search?
Christie's Cabaret.
We need to get Sean a shirt. He's been saying that faithfully for at least 10 years. Was it always Christie's? That's probably good. Perhaps he's having a secret and exciting affair with the girl who understands. And any of you have met him or her, the one who understands. In fairness, we must say that she may understand, but what are we going to do about a thing like that? So, question mark, eyesight without insight, spiritual blindness. we're really not discussing this person's level of understanding, are we? We're really talking about my dishonest actions in word and deed, yes? A man so involved often feels very remorseful at times, especially if he's married to a loyal and courageous girl who's literally gone to hell for him. Notice how they said remorseful at times. How many of you lived with it for a while? Remorseful at times, and then here we go. Okay. Whatever the situation, we usually have to do something about it. How'd they learn that? Same way I just described. We'll sit in it for as long as we can sit in it, and then we'll realize I can't live in this level of dishonesty because lies begat lies. Yes? Okay. If we're sure our wife does not know, should we tell her? I always love the polling we do here. Come on, where's my we should tell her? Where's my we should not tell her? Okay, I need one more question. How sure are you? Said if you're sure she does not know, should we tell? How sure are you? Remember, you thought you were pretty sneaky with that addiction thing, too. How many of you found out you weren't as sneaky with any of that as you thought? So it says you're only going to be able to run this by the Spirit, guys. It's going to be between you and the Spirit within you. It said, not always, we think. If she knows in a general way that we've been wild, should we tell her in detail? Wow, that was unequivocal. So how many of you got the detail? I'm giving you a different perspective. How many of you asked for detail, got the detail, would have preferred not to get so much detail? So you know there's no kindness in detail. It's almost like bragging after a while, right? I'm just checking. Undoubtedly, we should admit our fault. She may insist on knowing all the particulars. You ever had that happen? Okay, they're going to tell you what they suggest, and then they're going to tell you what sometimes happens, and we'll see if we can illuminate some experience here. She'll want to know who the woman is and where she is. We feel we ought to say to her that we have no right to involve another person. How many of you have felt that you ought to hold your mud and lack the power to do so? Okay, so they're going to talk to us a little bit about what happens then. We're sorry for what we've done, and God willing, it shall not be repeated. More than that, we cannot do. We have no right to go further, though there may be justifiable exceptions. So how many of you had justifiable exceptions? Under questioning, it got tough, right? And though we wish to lay down no rule of any sort, we've often found this the best course to take. What was the best course to take? I have no right to discuss the other. And I'll tell you what happened when I had to discuss the other, because I lacked the spiritual fortitude to just hold my ground, is I named the person, and then the anger got deflected from me to that person, and now I've ruined 2 relationships, not 1, all because of my dishonesty. So I get to testify about it, but it was not the best path. It was the path I took because I lacked the power to do so, but it did make me want to grow in the Spirit, so I didn't continue to behave that way. Does that make sense? Okay. Our design for living is not a one-way street. It's as good for the wife as for the husband. If we can forget, so can she. Careful with that little bit of information. That's a little secret you ought to let her conclude on her own. It's never a good idea to tell people how they ought to think or feel about something. It's better, however, that one does not needlessly name a person upon whom she can vent jealousy. Perhaps there are some cases where the utmost frankness is demanded. Any of you have just found yourself, I need to be straight. Do you notice how that was just you and the power in you? Stand up under it. Okay. No outsider can appraise such an intimate situation. You will grow in consciousness of God when you start owning your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions. It may be that both will decide that the way of good sense and loving kindness is to let bygones be bygones. Each might pray about it, having the other one's happiness uppermost in mind. Keep it always in sight that we're dealing with that most terrible human emotion, jealousy. Good generalship may decide that the problem be attacked on the flank rather than risk face-to-face combat. What are they talking about in so much metaphor? How many of you, when you went back to your family and it's a sincere desire to do right and you were growing in the Spirit and it was just difficult because there was so much anger at you? Did it help to point out to them that their expectations were unrealistic? How many of you have had to detach from family while you grew in the Spirit and allow yourself to just get free enough of it to then allow them to come back and approach you now that they've seen a different walk? Okay. So it's all, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we don't tell people that enough in recovery. There's a family dynamic that you've been playing a role in. And you come out of recovery and maybe you come out of incarceration. People are scared of us. They're afraid of what we do, but they're every bit as frightened when we start behaving differently. Because now we're not playing our role in their little dynamic. And I see a lot of people coming into our deal fail because they think they got to go save the family. No. We don't run into graves. We call them out. Does that make sense? You guys got to know that. Don't let the crabs pull you back in the pot. They will come out when they see the demonstration in your life. Okay. So if we have no such complication, there's plenty we should do at home. Sometimes we hear an alcoholic say that the only thing he needs to do is keep sober. How many of you have heard that? You've heard it 100 times if you've been in fellowship. At least I'm sober. Does that make any sense to the likes of, maybe it does, to the likes of me? At least I'm sober. I've been sober many times. I wasn't free. I wasn't comfortable. Anyone know what I'm talking about? Certainly he must keep sober, for there will be no home if he doesn't. But he's yet a long way from making good to the wife or parents whom for years he's so shockingly treated, passing all understanding as the patients mothers and wives have had with alcoholics. Had this not been so, many of us would have no homes today or would perhaps be dead. How many of you had supportive people in your life that you really didn't treat in the way that they should have been treated given the unconditional love they were showing? It wasn't that we didn't appreciate it. We had no way to manifest that appreciation outwardly, yeah? Because we had an illness that was, my addiction was like a tractor beam. I knew what I wanted to do, but I was going this way. The alcoholic is like a tornado roaring his way through the lives of others. Hearts are broken. Sweet relationships are dead. Affections have been uprooted. Selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. We feel a man is unthinking when he says that sobriety is enough. We walked you back through. Who's we? The first 100. They're telling us rarely have we seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed our path. The guys who do not make it are people who fail to enlarge their spiritual life. They're not telling you how you should live. They're telling you how they have decided if they will try and live, it won't bother them how you live. We will not be good servants when we're judging, but it is unthinking of me to say that sobriety is enough. It has never been enough. I need power and purpose and peace. And it all comes from within. It's not found out there. All right, so he's like the farmer who came out of the cyclone cellar to find his home ruined. To his wife he remarked, "Don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing?" How many of you woke up in that trap house or that alcoholic scene? I'm done for good. and the house is a freaking shambles. I got to go to my meeting. Y'all clean up, because at least I'm sober. You can say ouch if you don't want to say amen, Sean. Chap's not here tonight, so we got to do that every once in a while. Yes, there's a long period of reconstruction ahead, and we must take the lead. So if it is to be rebuilt, I'm going to have to demonstrate that power to me, through me. Does that make sense? Of my own power, I can do nothing, but through him, I can do all things. Right? Okay. A remorseful mumbling that we are sorry won't fill the bill at all. We ought to sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past as we now see it. How many of you see the past differently today? Hopefully every one of you. If not, let's get you through your steps. Because this idea that we get to remain the same and free is an absolute lie that we hear in the fellowship. If I am not radically changed in one hell of a hurry, I will destroy my life and the life of others, because that's what I do. Yes? Their defects may be glaring, but the chances are that our own actions are partly responsible. So we clean house with the family, asking each morning in meditation that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. Remember when they said, rarely have we seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed our path? Well, that path is this Creator who's going to show me the way of patience, kindness, tolerance, and love. And when that way is illuminated, that's what I'm experiencing, because the world reflects how I'm thinking and feeling. And that is freedom from the bondage of self. So we might want to say that prayer, because that's not one that I see them hanging on the walls of halls. And the reason I say that is they give us another caution. The spiritual life is not a theory. Guys, we do not believe in a theoretical power. We believe in a tangible power, expressed from within as power, peace, happiness, and a sense of direction. Yes? And they told us in our little encounter step that we were going to come to believe in power. And they equated our belief in God, the power we call God, with electricity. None of us can fully define or comprehend this power, but we have these theories that explain it. And why do I believe in electricity but not God? Because I've stuck a spoon in the fucking socket. Right, Janae? Where are you? So the spiritual life's not a theory. We have to live it. Unless one's family expresses a desire to live on spiritual principles, we think we ought not urge them. Why? We'll just drive them away. Attraction rather than promotion. Our sermon is our walk, not our talk. Yeah? We should not talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. They will change in time. Remember I just talked to you about family dynamics? Don't obsess on them. You're part of a bigger family. Yes? Take care of the brothers and sisters that recognize the power. They will change in time. How many of you are members here again? How weird was it to be told, welcome home, walking? It's really weird, isn't it? How many of you know it's true here? Yeah. If you don't feel part of that family, you're part of this family. And we don't give up. They will change in time. Our behavior will convince them more than our words. We must remember that 10 or 20 years of drunkenness would make a skeptic out of anyone. There may be some wrongs we can never fully right. We don't worry about them if we can honestly say to ourselves we would right them if we could. Some people cannot be seen. We send them an honest letter. And there may be a valid reason for postponement in some cases, but we don't delay if it can be avoided. This is all between you and God now, okay? You check the thing. Can this be avoided? No, then go. Does it make sense? No one's telling you what to do here. We should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble without being servile or scraping. As God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. No one's asking you to humiliate yourself. What we are asking you to do is own your stuff. Go pick up your trash, own that they didn't deserve it, and then walk out with your head high as a child of the living God. So we run through these promises that hang on walls. These are the 9th step promises. I know this because they are right at the end of the 9th step instruction. It's important because they are states of being, levels of consciousness as you grow in fitness in the Spirit. And so it isn't about the shit that glitters. Oh, I'm getting the promises. Here's my new Acura. Proof that I've grown in the Spirit is I don't need that fucking Acura. God may give me one, but that is not proof of growth. All right. If we're painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we're halfway through. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. What does new mean? Unlike anything I've ever experienced before. There's a scripture in Isaiah 60, if you look it up, talking about all the new blessings that came when the camels came. Remember I told you the camels were coming? There's this whole caravan of new blessings coming to everyone in here tonight. All right, so we'll not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We'll comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. Comprehend and know. Notice how those are states of being. How does one know peace? Have you ever experienced inner conflict? Have you ever experienced gaps without inner conflict? If you've experienced gaps without inner conflict so that you're able to clearly see the world, then you know peace. Yes? Okay. No matter how far down the scale we've gone, we'll see how our experience can benefit others. How do I know that? Because I've taken the power out for a walk and I've started to share my experience with others and I see how it benefits them. Yeah? That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We'll lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. Guys, they didn't say economic insecurity would leave us. They said fear of it would leave us. And you know how you get rid of fear? You confront it. So when we see people being stripped away of their worldly things and they're in fear, of course they are, but on the other side comes faith. Does that make sense? All right, so we will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us, and we'll suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They're being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. See you next week.